intro music. Yeah! Woohoo!
Hey there, Star Trek Fleeky Man fans. Welcome back to Monday's edition, where today, we're celebrating Labor Day. So happy Labor Day to all my fellow Americans. And honestly, if you're somewhere else in the world, happy Labor Day to you too, because you probably made something that I use or contributed somehow. We're all one big global family. But anyway, today we're going to talk about a misconception that's been passed around a lot. They got pointed out by our friend Meme, who corrected myself, Lewb, Silvis, who had a misunderstanding of how certain things work. Now, I preface all that to say, and had the artifact screen up in the background, because as y'all are probably aware, there's some confusion sometimes with how Scopely designs things, whether the design is intentional or not. And in this instance, we're going to talk about the effect that below deck officers have on not only our existing abilities like criticals, but also how they affect artifacts. And there is a difference. So coming into this, we believe that you needed to have your biggest, best below deck officer in terms of like hull breach or burning on the biggest ship in an armada, whether it's a solo armada or a group armada. And doing some further testing last night, we showed and proved that that's actually not the case in some scenarios. And again, thank you to me for pointing that out to myself and other content creators. So let's hit it. What exactly are we talking about? Well, number one, we're going to take a look at two different variables. One, how does hull breach affect criticals? And then two, how does it affect activating these various artifacts? Now, artifacts are big because now the game is really pushing what is known as isolytic damage. For those that don't remember what isolytic damage is, we'll put a graphic on the screen that Scopely produced so that you can get a visual of it. But the short answer is that isolytic damage is an additional form of damage that you can be adding to your fights with artifacts or officers. That can be pretty daggum useful, but if you can't get it to activate, then it's not useful at all. So let's focus on the Bladed for today, but we'll come back to it. That's at the second part of the video. The first thing I want to show you is a battle log where we're going to have a control test. Now, the control test is designed to do one thing, and that is one, none of these ships are going to have hull breach on them. So we'll come over here. There's burning, but that's not what we're worried about. We don't care about burning. We're testing hull breach because we're using all explorers, right? So I have to back out of this completely. So none of these ships have got hull breach on them, but they are all explorers. So we are running critical builds. We've got Cisco, Chakotay, and Khan. So we got three different critical builds, and we're going to look and see if we get big damage and what those numbers are. So this is our control. No hull breach. Again, repeating, no below deck officer for what we're looking at. So we're going to check here just for what the criticals are. We're going to use the valve door as our example in this video. If anybody would like these logs for testing, I'm more than happy to send the CSV files. So we'll see that the valve door is going to consistently put out criticals, in this case, anywhere from 2 to 2.4 million. Now, for those who are unaware, criticals work by taking all of your officer bonuses, your research, etc., buildings, and multiplying that to the min/max damage each weapon can create, which you can find the min-max of each weapon by clicking on the upgrade screen for your ship and then looking at the little, weapon itself. Again, screenshot to give you a little picture. So we can see in the control test, actually right here, that what our Valdor is going to consistently kind of produce. So we can go through and look at its other energy weapons, make sure it kind of falls in that range, but pretty consistent. Then what we're going to do is add to the test, where in this one, we added hull breach. Now, we added hull breach to the Coronar, the big ship. The big ship's going to get the hull breach right here. So 60% chance, a tier 4 Blonde Torres. And what this should do, for those who don't remember what hull breach does, when you do critical builds, the reason that we are always pushing hull breach is hull breach adds a 1.5 multiplier on top of critical damage. So you're going to have base damage, then criticals, you're multiplying on top of that, and then you'd multiply again by hull breach. I may put a graphic for basics so that you can see it. So now we need to go in and look, have we actually gotten an increase with B'Elanna being on the biggest ship? Is hull breach affecting everybody? Well, there's B'Elanna activating in round 1, so that's a good start. Now we're going to look for the Valdor. Does the Valdor have any critical shots? Well, nothing on this sect, but this is also an energy weapon. So we're comparing the same weapon to the same weapon. You see a 3.58 million critical. Again, this is the energy weapon. So the same weapon that we were just looking at in the previous log. So we can see here that the B'Elanna Torres hull breach that was on the biggest ship clearly works for all the ships in the Solar Armada, because that is the effect that hull breach can give a critical. Now let's do another test. Let's actually move hull breach to the weakest ship. We're going to move hull breach to the Enterprise now. Now the Enterprise is going to be hosting Lana Torres. You can see right there. And now we got to test, well, will hull breach still work for everything? Will we still see bigger criticals from the ships above now that we have it on the weakest? Because this was part of the confusion. Well, we're going to have to wait to find a round where she activates. So let's just scroll. I think round 6 is RNG's great. RNG's fantastic. Yeah, there we go. Lana Torres 6. And now we're looking at the Valdor. And there, again, 3 million, 3.2, etc. Significantly larger hits. So clearly we see it working now. Now the confusion beyond that would be, okay, we see that Lana Torres works how it should, or how we expect Lana Torres to work for hull breach with criticals. But is it the same case with artifacts? And this is where it gets a little tricky and a little squirrely. Now, as a rule, we've been teaching that you want to have your below deck officer on the biggest ship. But it's not factually correct to say that you have to have that for just activating this scenario, which is taking advantage of criticals. But is it the same thing with artifacts? Well, we did another test last night on stream, and here is me using interceptors. Now, why did Rev switch to interceptors? Remember to the beginning of the video when I brought up the Blade of Takan artifact. It's actually great for this particular test because it needs hull breach and interceptors to work. Now, how do we test this? It's actually really easy. We put the hull breach on the weakest ship again. This time it is a D4. Shout out to the D4. I'm actually giving the D4 a little bit of love. We almost never talk about the D4 anymore. So D4, thank you for being an interceptor that I can use for this video. All right, so we're going to have to re-enter that log. But anyway, Pylum, Defiant, D4. Clearly the D4 is the weakest. That's like a tier 5, tier 6 D4. Definitely the weakest of the group. So now we're going to go and see, do we get Lana Torres round 1? We do. Now that means that our Blade of Takan, if it worked how we believe it should, just like Lana Torres worked with criticals, this means that the Pylum should immediately have isolytic damage, according to the artifact, correct? But what we find is that's not the case. You'll see the Pylum doing no extra damage, no additional damage here, thanks to the Blade of Takan. But if we scroll down to the D4, what do we find? Isolytic damage. So there it is. So the problem is not that Lana Torres needs to be on your biggest ship, whether it's a group armada or a solo armada, to make sure that you're taking advantage of criticals. But if you are the type of alliance that wants to come together as a group and say, hey, let's be as efficient as possible. Let's everybody bring, Cisco, Miles, Janeway, or Cisco, Miles, and then you want to have Chakotay. They want many shots as possible. Whatever crew loadouts y'all decide to run as an Armada group, or 5-6 con, and y'all want to bring hull breach, but you want to use it as a below deck. You want to take advantage of hull breach being pretty universally great, but save people the officer slot. In that instance, you would need the biggest player in that group Armada to be bringing Lana Torres below decks to make sure that everybody below got to take advantage of it. It's the same thing in this solo. If the D4 is the one proccing it, then I'm not getting the advantage for the Defiant and the Pylum. Now, the Defiant did have some, you would have noticed in the log, that's because of Janeway. But the Blade Takan never activated. With isolytic becomes such an important aspect of this game where Scopely is continually to push more and more isolytic damage, we need to find ways to take advantage of it. And in this instance, we simply were not able to. So again, this comes down to placement and finding what value that you can have. Now, we'll also add, this is how it should work. Hull breach works with the criticals because when the guns hit a critical, it's looking at the beginning of the round. Is that box checked where we have hull breach? And if it is, everybody's getting the bonus to their criticals. But that's not how it works when it comes down to the shot selection for the artifacts and how they apply. So because of that, you have a little bit of a discrepancy here. And this little bit of information, I know, is kind of confusing and convoluted. Why is it different? It shouldn't be. Hopefully, Scopely sees this video, realizes their mistake, and makes the change to the game itself. Because the mechanics shouldn't work like that, right? I mean, it's logical that if I have hull breach at the beginning of the round, like in this fight, that my artifact should work for all my ships. But that's not how it works. And it's important for players to know that because isolytic damage truly can create a significant increase to your overall ability to damage armadas, hostiles, whatever it is that we're taking on. And if you don't have that, well, then you're missing out on all that work you're putting into. What's the whole point of going through all these formation armadas and running these with a group if you can't take advantage of the artifacts you're unlocking? So hopefully this information helps you, clears up a little bit of confusion. Again, shout out to Meme, who did a slide correct for us because we talked about having Lana Torres as the biggest ship no matter what. not required for actually the critical side of things, but required for the artifact side of things. And that is an important correction. So that's why we love the community. Wish Scopely would be a little bit more clear on stuff of this, but hopefully it helps you out. And if it did, let me know. Comment down below. That's all you got to do is comment down below. If you don't comment, how the heck will I know if I've helped you, or if you have more questions, or if you don't understand it all, because Scopely's confusing. But anyway, comment down below. If you appreciate the video, throw it a like. Likes are really easy. All you got to do is press the little thumbs up button. If you haven't already, hit subscribe. Helps out the channel tremendously. You're amazing. Hopefully this little bit of battle log math wasn't too boring for you. We love the math, and make sure you check out our Twitch streams when we go a little bit more in depth for things like this. And we'll catch you on the next video tomorrow. Remember, new arc. Got the hint? Hint is in my Discord. Is anybody? Well, I actually tell you, we've actually had a couple people have broken the cipher. They've broken the code, and they know what's coming tomorrow. They found out in our Discord. Live long and plunder. Stay safe for the Space Cowboys. Deuces, that's me. Catch you on the next one. And Revs out.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.